King Jesus, King Jesus. Hey, I want to do this video to try and snap folks into reality that in America, you can never get rich unless you work for the system. And then your wealth is only dependent on the system. In other words, even if you have money in the bank, it's not in the bank. Here's an article from Irs.gov that says that in the United States, the IRS is seizing hundreds of perfectly legal bank accounts and refuses to give the money back. This is without going to court. They're seizing the money out of bank accounts. It says the Internal Revenue Service has been seizing bank accounts belonging to small businesses and individuals who regularly made deposits of less than $10,000 but broke no laws, and the government is refusing to return the money taken. First of all, the IRS is over the government. They're not a part of the government. They're part of the Federal Reserve Bank. So they're over the government, and the government can't do anything about what they do. So that's the first thing. It says the practice is called civil asset forfeiture, allows IRS agents to seize property they suspect of being tied to crime, even if no charges are filed, and their agency is allowed to keep a share of whatever is forfeited, the New York Times reported. It's designed to catch drug traffickers, racketeers, and terrorists by tracking cash deposits under $10,000, which is the threshold for when banks are federally required to report activity to the IRS under the Bank Secrecy Act. That only applies to you, the little guy. The congressmen don't get their money monitored and taken. They can put $10,000 in and take $10,000 out. They can put $100,000 in and take $100,000 out. Look at Mitt Romney. He manages all these accounts for all these congressmen overseas and everywhere. The IRS doesn't bother them because they're part of the satanic network that you work for and that you're a slave to. That's why they will not allow you to accumulate any wealth unless you go through your initiation in the Masonic Lodge or whatever. You can't get rich. They're not going to allow you to get rich. It is not illegal to deposit less than $10,000 in cash unless it is specifically done to avoid triggering the federal reporting requirements known as structuring. Now, how can they know that? Like they can read your mind. That's the all-seeing eye attitude. That's how you know it's satanic. Thus, banks are required to report any suspicious transactions to authorities, including patterns of deposits below that threshold. So where are you going to keep your money? You can't keep it in the banks. Because if you keep too much out of the banks, when they change it, you can't change your money in order to get the new bills. So you're stuck with worthless paper. And then if you take it all in at once, they're going to charge you with money laundering. You can't get rich in America. It's impossible. Unless you initiate it into, I guess you got to call it the Illuminati. Because you can't do nothing without their approval in America. All these people talking about black people talking about they billionaires and whatnot. They're only billionaires in their minds, okay? Because whenever they want to, they can pull the carpet right from under them. Don't you see how Charles Barkley is acting? You know, he got to sell out just to keep his job and keep his money flow. And he got an addiction to money because he liked to gamble. So he gonna sell you out and everybody else too, just to keep his lifestyle going. It says, of course, these patterns are also exhibited by small businesses like bodegas and family restaurants whose cash on hand is only insured up to $10,000 and whose owners are wary of what would be lost in case of a robbery or a fire, the examiner noted. So maybe if you could buy gold, you could buy gold and hide the gold somewhere, but then it could get stolen too. Says Carol Henders, a victim of a civil asset forfeiture, owns a cash-only Mexican restaurant in Iowa. Last year, the IRS seized her checking account and the nearly $33,000 in it. She told the Times she did not know of the federal reporting requirements for suspicious transactions, and that she thought she was doing everyone a favor by reducing their paperwork. My mom had told me, if you keep your deposits under $10,000, the bank avoids paperwork, she said. I didn't actually think it had anything to do with the IRS. And her bank wasn't allowed to tell her that her habits could be reported to the government. If customers asked about structuring their deposits, banks are allowed to give them a federal pamphlet. We're not allowed to tell them anything, Jolynn Van Steenwyk, the fraud and securities manager for Indus Bank, told the Times. So they got her for a measly $33,000 that she got from a restaurant. Last year, banks filed more than 700,000 suspicious activities reports, according to the Times. The median amount seized by the IRS was $34,000, according to analysis by the Institute for Justice, while legal costs can easily amount to $20,000 or more, meaning most account owners can't afford to fight the government for their money. So they just take your money. Maybe you were saving to buy a new car in cash, and they take it and you can't even get it back. We're going after people who are really not criminals. David Smith, a former federal prosecutor who is now a forfeiture expert and lawyer in Virginia, told the Times. They're middle-class citizens who have never had any trouble with the law. Rick Ungar wrote that the practice amounts to nothing short of grand larceny on the part of the Internal Revenue Service in an article for Forbes. The Civil Asset Forfeiture Reform Act of 2000 came about after the Supreme Court case Ratzlaff versus U.S., in which the government argued that because structuring is not the kind of activity that an ordinary person would engage in innocently, it was therefore reasonable to hold a structurer responsible for evading the reporting requirements without the need to prove specific knowledge that such evasion is unlawful. But the court rejected that argument, citing the lawful actions of small businesses to reduce the risk of an IRS audit. Congress, believing that the decision would make it harder to find and to prosecute money launderers and drug dealers, according to the Washington Post blog of Volokh conspiracy, the legislature then removed the word willfully from the previous law about civil asset forfeiture, leaving us with the mess we now have. The Institute for Justice, a Washington-based public interest law firm that is seeking to reform civil forfeiture practices, analyzed structuring data from the IRS, which made 639 seizures in 2012, up from 114 in 2005. The Times reported only 1 in 5 was prosecuted as a criminal structuring case. Most victims of civil asset forfeiture settled with the government for only a small portion of what was seized from them. Army Sergeant Jeff Cortazzo of Arlington, Virginia, wanted to deposit cash for his daughter's college education, but wanted to avoid paying a second round of taxes on the money. He asked the bank teller what to do. She said, "Oh, that's easy. You have to deposit less than $10,000, he told the Times. The government seized $66,000 from the sergeant. He lost $21,000 of his money in the settlement with the IRS. As a result, the oldest of his 3 daughters had to delay college by a year." The Times noted, "The IRS accidentally takes your money, and when you ask for it back, they try to keep a portion of it," Unger wrote. How does that not have the odor of extortion? For his part, Cortazzo would have done things differently. If he'd known his account could have been seized, he would have just plopped the whole thing in the account and been done with it, he said. The IRS announced in a written statement Thursday that it will no longer pursue the seizure and forfeiture of funds associated solely with legal source structuring cases unless there are exceptional circumstances justifying the seizure and forfeiture, and the case has been approved at the Director of Field Operations level. But Richard Weber, the Chief of Criminal Investigations at the tax agency, noted in a statement that structuring is still a crime, regardless of the source, and that the new policy will not apply to past seizures. The policy of involving seizure and forfeiture in legal source structuring cases will remain the same, he noted. So you can't get rich because everybody watching you. Everybody gonna take your money. If you try to save it at home, you're gonna get robbed. If you try to buy gold, you're gonna get robbed. If you put it in a bank, you're gonna get robbed. Unless you in the Illuminati.